Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest, and that's going to be Landon Swann, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com. Thanks for joining us, Landon.
Hey, guys. Great to be here.
All right. So we're talking travel. Everybody wants to travel. And it seems like to me, Landon, if you look at maybe the landscape of maybe consumer spending, everybody wants to travel now. Everybody wants experiences, maybe pulling back from what we saw over the last year and a half, where everybody was buying things for their homes and hunkering down. What kind of data are you guys seeing at LikeFolio that kind of, reiterates that fact?
Sure. So I think it's a lot of pent up demand, right? Everybody was hunkered down for quite a while. And it seemed like we got the COVID green light, the all clear, and then Omicron came in and kind of spoiled that party. So I don't think we're quite there yet. In fact, recent survey showed that about 22% of people canceled their Christmas or New Year's travel plans because of Omicron. So I think it's a spoiler right now, but I do think that there's still pent up demand, and we're going to get there eventually once we have, again, the green light from COVID. But when you kind of compare, we like to look at Booking, we like to look at Expedia, and even throw in Airbnb into the mix, just as sort of a comparison. And what we're seeing is that Booking is doing really, really well. They've got purchase intent numbers leading all three of those, very strong numbers. The stock is, it's at all-time, right around year highs, and it's actually doing better than it was pre-COVID. You can see here, if you look at the purchase intent line, that's that green line, 90-day moving average of people saying effectively, I booked something on Booking or Priceline or one of the other properties that they own. And you could see it's doing very well. So this is a strong data point, bottomed out at the end of 2020 and has really came back strong. It's almost back to where it was 2019. So people are beginning to use this site almost as much as they were. Expedia has a similar type of trajectory. It's very strong, not as strong. But if you look at Booking, you can see there on the chart, plus 140% year over year on purchase intent. Of course, we're talking about an outlier year, right? I mean, you couldn't pick much of a lower spot than it was a year ago, but it is showing that people are starting to come back. And when we look at just how people are traveling, we see that pretty much across the board, people are, they're booking more flights, they're traveling more, even doing more road trips, I believe. But you can see the comparison here, Booking off the charts here, Expedia strong, and then Airbnb, which is interesting to me, that they're kind of falling behind a little bit. And what's happening is that they actually had a little bit of a shift where people were, I think, a little bit more fearful of hotel stays. And so they actually felt it safer to go into someone else's house and do Airbnb. So Airbnb had a better last year than the other two, but now it's kind of flipping back and going back to the way it was, where people are getting more comfortable with hotels. I think a lot of hotels have gained confidence with all their cleaning routines and things like that, whereas maybe you're not sure if the guy house you're staying at, is taking care of stuff. So it's interesting to see that shift where Airbnb did well last year, and now the traditional hotels, traditional booking sites are starting to come back.
World's largest online travel agency by revenue, right? And they're comprehensive. They will literally book anything you want to do. But they also own OpenTable, which is another big revenue driver for them. I mean, they are comprehensive in the things that they have. This is a big company without a lot of float. That's why you get a $2,400 price. But isn't this an indication, Landon? Isn't their price action an indication? Isn't the TSA data over the holidays an indication that the Omicron variant, though loud in its headlines, is turning out to be more contagious but less threatening? And we could be days away from a snapback in terms of interest in travel. And sure, people can pause travel when everyone in their family gets Omicron over the holidays, like mine did. But guess what? We're all through it now. And I leave next Friday for vacation. Out. See ya. And I'm not canceling. For any reason, I'm not canceling. So aren't we finding our way through this a little better than we have in the past? And these stocks, especially a comprehensive name like this, should do extremely well if the world starts traveling again, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is the travel stock, right? I mean, Expedia is one also, but booking is, they can do it all, right? You can fly, you can book a hotel, you can book a house, you can do anything you want, experiences, cars. So I think you're absolutely right. I do think that the way people perceived COVID a year ago, a year and a half ago, is very different than the way they perceive it now. I think more and more people have gotten it, and this latest variant seems to be, just like you said, super, super contagious, but also very mild. And I think that the more people that get it and go through that, or know someone that did, they start to say, well, I used to travel when people had colds and flus, and it didn't keep me from doing that. So maybe this is just in that category. So I think that we're very close for these stocks to start getting that volume back. And just like you saw, the purchase intent is right there. It's almost where it was in 2019. And you still have this Omicron out there kind of casting a little bit of doubt. But I think that the more it goes on, and the infection rate is super, super high. So the more it goes on, we could be there extremely fast, just like you're talking about. I mean, I think we'll be there for sure in months, and it may be weeks. So that's really exciting for these stocks. The sort of the caveat that gives me pause on Booking is their happiness score. It is absolutely abysmal. It is 34%. So 2 out of 3 people who talk about using one of these sites on social media are complaining about it. And of course, people like to complain about travel. But Expedia is 39. Again, nothing to brag about, but it's better than 34. Compare that to Airbnb at 65. So you've got airlines that are much higher. I think that the airlines are generally, the good ones are in the 50s. You got your Spirit and Allegiant down in the 30s as well, but 34% is a very concerning number. And I actually kind of saw, what's interesting is, we track, for example, Kayak, and through that acquisition, the happiness for Kayak started really high. It was very high, a happiness company. And then after acquisition, now it's much, much lower. I think that the way that they handle customers just turns people off. But, they churn out the revenue, and they are one of the go-tos. So if you're betting on a turnaround, which, Kevin, I agree, I think we're almost there, this could be a good company to bet on.
Yeah, and, I look at it this way, Landon. With all the cancellations and the disruptions caused by these variants, of course, they probably don't have the capacity to handle all the rescheduling and rebooking and refunds and everything else. So, of course, people are going to be, on social media bashing them a little bit. So not surprising that the happiness score is down. But the way that I look at it, when you mention the purchase intent, and you've got big, huge numbers in Booking.com, up over 140%. Now, is that actually people booking stuff, or is that the intent to book, and maybe their plans are going to get disrupted, and maybe they don't see that revenue? I know Booking's huge over in Europe because that's where they were originally based before they started buying up all these other companies. So is that intent, or is this actually people putting money to work here?
Well, so I'll explain how purchase intent works. That's a really good question. So basically what we've got is we've got a map that knows every single brand and product owned by each one of these companies. And and we also have words associated with those words and phrases that tell us, and we've tested them, that mean that someone is intending to spend money with this company. Either they just have, or they plan to in the very near future. So the idea here is that someone is saying, I booked on Priceline, I booked on Booking, whatever it may be, or I'm about to. And so the intent there is that someone is planning on spending money, but just like you said, there is the possibility for cancellations. In fact, there's a recent survey by industry experts expecting flight cancellations in January to be extremely high, some as high as like 30 or 40%, which could be insane. So it really just comes down to, how do these airlines handle pilots possibly calling in sick and all the things that can cause those delays? So it's a revenue question mark for these companies, but I think that people want to get back. There is that pent-up demand that we started to see at the beginning of this year, a few months ago, at the end of last year, and it got put on pause with Omicron. And we all kind of thought Delta was behind us and all that. We got the new one, right? So now it's continuing that path, just like Kevin talked about, more contagious, less deadly. And if it just continues on that path, then we could have all that pent up demand surging into these websites and causing really high revenue as people get out there, especially right now. Kevin's traveling because it's cold up there. A lot of people are saying, you know what, I want to go on a vacation. This is the time, right? So if we can get those two things to line up, the weather and Omicron kind of fading as far as fear factor, then I think we could have a really good next couple of months for these companies.
Yeah, definitely. I think the exhaustion that people are having with this also, that they're just going to continue to do what they want to do as opposed to the previous variants where people kind of just went into lockdown, might, come into play there also. Hey, Landon, as long as I can get it back over to Australia, not for double the price that I paid 2 or 3 years ago, that's all I want out of the travel industry at this point. One day I'll get back there. All right, Landon, great discussion here on the travel industry and Booking.com. Have a great day.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Stay warm.
All right, that's Landon Swann, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com.